Thank you, Sarah Marie, for being willing to share your experience. Um, I'm really curious. I guess we're recording this so that we can create something that will hopefully be a resource for the community and for people who are practicing in level three, practicing the meditation system that we work with. And so. You've been doing a series of month-long retreats, um, and I'm curious about the origin of the idea to do this. I have lots of curiosities. I'm curious about how you did it. Like how did you take, what was taught in the class and then actually turn that into something that you could practice in a retreat setting? And I guess I'm just going to throw all my questions in at once and just let you handle it however you do. I'm curious how it went. So let's start there.
Beautiful. Yeah. So I've been a long time meditation practitioner, and after each level of Aletheia, I decided to do a month-long retreat to integrate the experience and progressively practice with what I was learning in level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and level 4. And initially was trying to figure out how does this integrate with meditation in levels 1 and 2 without knowing about level 3 and 4 and the whole meditation system. So it was a lot of experimenting and kind of seeing how can I bring in the parts view, how can I bring in the poetic attunement, how can I deepen my embodiment of qualities of presence on these retreats, and just try to see how this fits with meditative practice. And then levels 3 and 4 were very much like this grand reveal of oh wow, there's this whole system then here, and so much more to discover, and a whole path that I can practice on these deep retreats. So that was a little bit of that journey, and it's been incredible. It's really deepened my practice as an unfolding practitioner and coach, and just it's been some of the most beautiful experiences I've had in my life to be on those month-long retreats.
Yeah, that's really lovely to hear. And yeah, I think it's a really interesting idea to, dedicate some time to integration and just let yourself really sink into the teachings and the whole sort of world of this. Because the big thing with this kind of education and this kind of learning is it's really about entering into and deepening into a different view of what it is to be human, a different view of the world. And so all these distinctions of parts and process and qualities and things like that. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, that you gave yourself a lot of time to really be with your own experience, your own inner process, and explore it. It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, it was really this way of embodying the view deeply without distractions, and just carving out that sacred time. And I very much saw it as sacred preparation for my work in the world and my work as an Aletheia coach, and just for everything. And that sitting with these teachings in a deep way was very worthwhile, and kind of felt like I wanted that space for just giving myself fully to it and see what unfolds from there. And I always felt in the daily life, it was I always was longing for more of I wish I could just lock myself in a room and just go through all the readings and practice. And there was this longing for I just want to fully immerse myself in this, fully immerse myself in this view of reality and embody this view and see what unfolds. Can I really connect with the ultimate goodness of reality by fully being in this? Can I cultivate that deep trust in life? Can I connect more and more with true nature and let that shine through?
Yeah.
And then those experiences just progressively build more and more trust in life, more and more trust in unfoldment and the mystery. and it just accelerated everything. Like each time I went back in was just another acceleration, and it felt like I was on one long retreat for those 4 years. Like it really felt like it was just continuous. It was not just in the deep container of the retreat, but it just kept on going. And there was like that quickening of the unfoldment in the daily life too, and more of that possibility for being in the world, but not of the world. Like that
Yeah.
felt more and more accessible, from kind of starting out more with it's all in the meditation retreat, and that's why I have the deepest states of absorption and experience of true nature, to then much more of that like living, walking around realization, having more of the pristine spaciousness kind of clarity dimension as well. And then even in the practice, like having a shift in this most recent retreat I did in May, of having both simultaneously versus just that deep absorption. So it was yeah, it's been very fascinating.
Yeah, that's really, really great. Yeah, I remember talking with Daniel Thorson several years ago when he was in the beginning of the training. And he told me that he was living out at Maple at the time. And he was saying that he did a week-long retreat. And the only thing that he really practiced was just the poetic attunement. Like that was like the compass heading was just, I'm just going to be in the poetic attunement as much as possible. And I remember him saying something like it was the most profound retreat that he had had. So there is something of, you know, giving us ourselves space to really sink into the poetic attunement, because there's a lot in our world that kind of pulls us out of it. I mean, I experience that every day, and I'm sure everyone does, right? And so, of course, the poetic attunement is something that we can stabilize and become and sink into more and more and more and more. And yet, living in this world, it always has to be something that we keep returning to over and over and over again. And then slowly it starts to become more our default attunement to the world. So, um, I know from previous conversations I've had with you where we've touched into this a tiny bit, but I'd really like to hear more about it. Like, how did you actually, so these were month-long retreats, and I'm curious how you approached, sort of orienting to what you would practice over the course of the retreat. And because I know you would often start out with sort of concentration meditation, it sounds like, if I understood, and then kind of sink in progressively in this kind of staged way that we do practice meditation in Aletheia. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you learned about that, how you approached that. And I'm also curious how you approached each day. Like, okay, you have a day. You have no obligations, you have no commitments. People are bringing you food, I assume. Something is you're practicing in a supported retreat setting. How did you approach structuring your day, or did you just let it unfold? Or so I'm curious about those two things.
Yeah, so I had an intention to practice with the whole Aletheia meditation system during the retreats 3 and 4, once I had that accessible, and would start out just with the progressive practice and just chunk it out into the 4 weeks, and then just follow an intuitive sense of when it was time to transition into the next stage of practice. But I
Yeah,
really wanted to sink in and practice the concentration meditation to build that concentration, that stability, so I could then transition into the sudden awakening practices, and then do the generation stage practice, and then do the completion stage practice, and then kind of open
yeah,
up into the 12-fold. But I did do it systematically, and even just to, after a life full of all the things, like just to really settle in and just do something simple of just focusing on the breath in the lower belly center, and just allowing myself to arrive, allowing the mind, the parts to settle more, um, and then transition into the sudden awakening practice, and then just like really be in that space. And, I'm doing my third retreat, I would be in deep meditation for 4 hours at a time, like for weeks. I was just in 4-hour meditation chunks, or 3.5 hours, or 3 hours, like morning, like a big morning chunk, a big afternoon chunk. And I was just so dropped in that I could just sit, and there was no desire to get up. There was no need. Like, the only reasons I would shift was to eat, to eat lunch, or to use the bathroom. But otherwise, I got so deeply absorbed through first doing the concentration practice, and then doing the sudden awakening, or even doing sudden awakening to help deepen concentration.
Exactly.
I would also do that. And then from that place, just a lot of creative flow started to open up. And, it's like really like this whole imaginal realm opened up, and I had, songs emerge in deep meditation, which felt like a miracle, because I was never into singing or songwriting, and I just had full melodies, full lyrics, and all like really deep dharma transmission songs that were very much mirroring the practice and the teachings as well. So that was really fascinating. And then that whole imaginal piece really accelerated even more when I then started to transition into the generation stage practice, and
Right.
completion stage practice as well. And I kind of made that transition at the beginning of like week 3. That's kind of like when I then moved into that. So it was like a couple of weeks, especially in the third retreat, that was just concentration and the emptiness practice of just, being in that
Yeah.
space.
And I wanna talk more about the songs and the things that were emerging, but I want to come back to like, so I get that it sounded like you structured your day around kind of like a longer sort of morning sit, and then some kind of a lunch break, and then an afternoon sit. But I'm curious, like, did you were you waking up with an alarm? Were you like really, get to the cushion really quickly? Were you, because I'm coming from my retreat background experience has been mixed. So I used to originally do Zen retreats, and they were very regimented. We had a timetable. We had a time when we were supposed to do this and that. And I've also done retreats in the Diamond Approach tradition, which are much more open-ended, much more teaching and working in groups. And that's the primary practice, supported by some meditation. But we would only do maybe a 45-minute meditation in the morning and one in the afternoon. That was it. The rest of the time was really engaged. So very different kind of format. Um, I've done one solo retreat that was only about 5 days. And I'm asking because that was the question I had when I approached that retreat. I was like, okay, well, I know I'm not going to be talking to a lot of people, but so I know I'm alone, and I know my food is provided for. I just had to like walk down to the sort of a kitchen area, and it was available at a certain time of day, and I didn't have to interact with anyone because it was just sitting there with my name on it. And the other retreatants, we were all in our own kind of cabins. Um, you know, our names were on everything, and so we would pick it up, and then we got to decide what was breakfast, what was lunch, what was dinner. You kind of had your options. It was you could eat whatever you wanted of this, but that was your day's food. So I knew that was happening at a certain time. But then I really had to make some decisions about like, okay, I know I want to get some movement. I know I want to be outside and take a walk every day. I want to meditate. I know I want to read every day. I know I want to do a little bit of writing every day. And so I had to find a rhythm with that. And I'm curious because it was completely of your own design. So I'm curious how you approached that, and what did you learn about how to approach that?
Yeah, so I was also in a retreat container that had a set schedule and a structure with other retreatants, but I also
Okay.
chose to pursue more of my own flow in practicing in this way. So it was a combination of being on that schedule as well as doing my own practice like honor my own rhythm. So I would usually start with a morning sit, in the morning around like 5:30,
Mm-hmm.
and then have breakfast, and then go for a nice walk in nature. Practice some walking meditation, just open an awareness, and then do my longer morning sit, and then have lunch at noon. So every day at noon, and then do another longer walk or hike in nature. Usually there was like a 2-hour lunch break, so I would spend that time again
Mm.
outside, practicing. Um, and then the afternoon sit. And then in one of the centers, so on my third retreat, they had yoga classes, gentle, mindful movement classes in the afternoon several times a week. So I would often, do that as well,
Mm.
gentle movement. But otherwise, I would, always walk a lot and do some gentle stretching. And then on this most recent retreat, I did do the diamond body practices on a daily basis. So
Mm-hmm.
I built that into the flow. And then have, then there was like an evening tea. You could have a light meal or tea, and I did the tea version. And then like another, kind of like another mini hike to get the tea, and then another sit before the dharma talk in the evening. On
Mm.
the third retreat, there was a daily dharma talk. On the fourth retreat I just did, there was a dharma talk a couple of times a week only, because it was like a self-retreat facility, so much
Mm.
structure provided, or other interactions with teachers, and then more practice after that dharma talk as well. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So, so yeah, it sounds like there was a little bit of light structure, and you were actually able to really kind of also sort of flex and flow with that. So that's really good.
Yeah, and the
Um,
first couple of retreats, I was much more in that structure, and I would follow the schedule. But then I also did longer sits where I just, sat through a walk, for example, because they have like 45 minutes of sitting, 45 minutes of walking, alternating throughout the day. They were also offering some Brahma Vihara practices as well,
yeah.
like loving kindness, meditation, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity practice. That was on
Mm-hmm.
the first 3 retreats, and then the fourth one that was not provided. But that was also
Yeah.
nice to have like the heart opening practices, and just feel that I was part of a field with other practitioners. That felt important. That I was being held in community. We were practicing together as a sangha, with a shared aspiration, and just feel a lot of that goodwill in everyone, from all the staff and the teachers. And it was a very holding kind of environment that
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's really, really important. Um, so it sounds like you were actually it was kind of like you were practicing in a meditation hall. So you were actually sitting with the practitioners so that you could really feel a sense of the community. The community was palpably there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I alternated. So on the first 3 retreats, I did a lot of sitting in the hall and also sitting in nature quite a bit. I really enjoyed
Hmm.
sitting in nature by myself, and had some really deep meditations that way. And then on that fourth retreat, since it was a self-retreat container, um, everyone practiced in their rooms or wherever they wanted. So it was less of that we're all together in the hall at all times. But there were still some touch points,
I see. Yeah.
sitting in the hall with others.
One of the things I'm picking up from your description of your day, which I think is a really good lesson. It makes a lot of sense to me, is like you have a meal and then you take a walk
Mm-hmm.
and then you come back to practice.
Yes.
I think that sounds really, really smart because it's like, the time to digest the meal a little bit, to just move your body after eating rather than going from eating directly into sitting, where I could really feel that, at least for me, I think would be challenging. So, some kind of meal, maybe even walking to the meal, but then there's
Mhm.
some kind of a, like a nature walk or something like that. And I know from some of our past conversations, and when you were doing walks in nature, you were also using that as practice time, if I'm remembering. Can you say a little bit about how you did that, how you approached that?
Yeah, kind of approaching it throughout the different stages with different things to practice while walking. So
Yeah.
I would like practice like emptiness of phenomena, right? Or just kind of like walking around as the unilocality and just seeing that everything is just coming towards me as I am perfectly still, you
Right.
know, or like practicing with the deep darkness and the clear radiance, seeing the depth of everything and seeing the bright surface of everything and the union of both, and just that is how radiant and luminous everything is, and the mystery, or walking and feeling the sense of the like this like diamond will quality, and feeling
Hmm.
really solid and stable, and walking as that, I think this the silver platinum will, right, like the kind of like
Hmm.
that deep embodied
Yep.
unshakableness,
Hmm.
like
Deep
feeling that
sense of support.
a sense of support, like the gray embodiment of like really feeling my belonging with the earth, and that holding, kind of just like, yeah, feeling into those things and practicing those aspects that I could while walking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
So it
practicing
sounds,
with the diamond vehicles as well, like
yeah.
walk, and I'm attuning to the pleasure of everything, or I'm, yeah, attuning with my commitment to protect truth, beauty, and goodness, and like the sense of like walking as this stand for all of life, and for true nature, and like feeling into that as I'm walking, and we're tuning to um some of the practices of the luminous cocoon that you had introduced, and feeling into the energy fields of the trees and the animals, and yeah, so the walks became a huge part of these retreats, and just it was like everything came to life on those walks, and many insights came, and many ideas for how I wanted to then spend the rest of the day would come, or maybe some doing even diamond unfoldment, like maybe some kind of
Hmm.
something is evoked, and I would walk with that and unfold that more deeply. So yeah, I used to walks in different ways, or just singing. I would just sing on the walk, and
Hmm.
with the songs that came through, and that was very beautiful and very meditative, and it's just, yeah, it felt like very much the world was incredibly enchanted. There was so much awe and wonder walking in the forest, on those walks. Yeah.
What I hear in what you're describing is like there's in this staged meditation system that we have, there are a variety of different ways that you were able to practice that stage in the walks and sort of adapt the practices there, find practices that were synergistic with the stage of the practice that you were in. And but kind of like pervasively throughout the walks, what I'm also hearing is they were opportunities to really practice just living in the view, just like being in the view, being poetically attuned, and and the kind of more sort of elaborated view, if you will, like of a particular stage of practice. Like you're talking about like aligning to the diamond vehicles, which actually brings a sort of like a refinement of the view. So there's still loving truth, beauty, and goodness for its own sake, but there's a refinement of that love into a sense of protection or pleasure or bliss or other kinds of things, support, and then really being in that view and then just allowing yourself to be in that, to walk in that, to experience yourself and nature in that, and just to work with what unfolds there. So that sounds really great. And then you've already shared a little bit, but I'm curious, you've talked about these like songs that have come through. And this is such a fascinating thing because I think I shared with you that, in the Mahamudra lineage, there is this notion of a doha, and a doha is like a dharma song. And frequently when we drop into deep depth, as much as one might try, and I've given it a good shot to describe and to write about these things, truthfully, probably the best way to palpate and express them is poetically. I'm not much of a poet, which is probably why I haven't gone in that direction. Um, but I'm really curious about this kind of like, it sounds like almost like poetry that just kind of emerges in the midst of the realization, as the realization, completely non-dual with the realization. And
Yeah.
this, it sounds like this happened for two retreats, the last two retreats that you've done. So what can you share about that experience?
Yeah, it just felt magical. Like I was just, also my sense of devotion just skyrocketed on that third retreat, and has been very present in my life since then. It really was just, wow, I'm just in so much awe and wonder, and so I feel so much devotion and so much gratitude. And it felt very miraculous to receive these songs, in deep meditation without doing anything to elaborate them, or like they were just happening and fully formed with the melodies and the instruments and beautiful lyrics, and for hours, like when the first song came through, it was just hours of this just playing, and I was sitting there crying and like just like wow, and there's so much awe and wonder, and like I could have just kneeled down like on the earth, and just a sense of wow, like the mystery is so beautiful, it's so incredible. Like it was extremely moving. It was very, very moving. And also for the part of me that thought I couldn't sing, and was told by my mom that I don't have a good voice, and I shouldn't even try. And like that was such an aspect of my life that I just would have never envisioned opening to. And so it was the sense of like, wow, like this is, yes, like if this is possible, anything is possible. Like I'm a true believer. Like yes, like the mystery is incredible. If this can come through me and I'm inspired to sing, like anything is possible. uh yeah, that song just wouldn't let go. Like it was just there, and it really wanted to be sung. And then another song came as well on that third retreat, and I had a lot of poetry come as well. Like the weeks 3 and 4 were like everything that was in my head was just like, it was just poetry. Like the first couple of weeks were very empty. That was so emptied out. That was so, didn't no writing whatsoever. I was just there. It's just in this very equanimous space, and just yeah, very empty. And then weeks 3 and 4 was just this creative explosion, and
Right.
all this poetry coming through, and I could like barely write it down fast enough like to capture. It just kept on going. And then on this most recent retreat, I had 6 songs come through, which was incredible. Also weeks 3 and 4, and very much aligned with the different stages of the practice, and what I was working with and what I was metabolizing. And so the songs were, like the really about like the descent of the deep darkness and the ascent of the clear radiance, and we are the mystery unfolding. And I've got it here on my wall as well. And like just like there were instructions for practice. There was one that was about, it doesn't need to make sense, don't know mind. Not knowing is the precondition for insight, like just as a reminder of it's okay, you're gonna, it will feel like everything clicks, and then you will get back into the space of not knowing what's going on, and it's okay. Like, don't know mind, just relax, surrender. And that was really helpful. That song would come in when I felt like, wait, like 12-fold, like I'm neither existing or not existing. Like, how does this, oh, like what's going, I was like, okay, here's the song. Let's just have this on repeat. Like, just, yeah. And I ended up writing 130 pages on that in my journal, on that retreat of just pouring through. And
Yeah,
yeah, so it was really, really incredible. And I've since produced these songs too, and I'm working on the second EP with the new songs, and it's just been really inspiring. And yeah.
that's fantastic. I think I heard from Donna that you actually produced them and put them on Spotify. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to share the links along with this video so that people can listen to them.
Yeah.
Um,
My artist name is Joy for No Reason, which is the alter ego that emerged during generation stage practice.
ah,
Yeah,
beautiful.
one of them.
Joy,
Yeah.
joy for no reason. Yeah. The thing that's so fascinating to me is this is exactly my understanding of how this meditation system functions. That, first we do concentration meditation, um, which, as you know, is an absorption style of meditation where we're really concentration is great for just sinking down through the depths from our usual everyday sort of walking around, way of being in the world, which is often at the depth of parts. Even when we have access to presence, we still are having to relate to this world in which we take ourselves to be separate. That's the way our culture is set up. That's the way our society is set up. And so we can't just ignore that. There is a way we have to occupy that world. And as we sink down in, we become more deeply absorbed in being itself, which is none other than our own nature. And oftentimes we will, at some point, sort of plateau in our capacity to do that because there are constructions, self-constructions, constructions of the world that we haven't been able to really work through yet. And so we switch into sudden awakening meditation, emptiness practice, and that gives us a whole other approach to working through these kinds of things that complements parts work, which is another way we work with constructions, but allows us to kind of work more with the building blocks of parts. And as you say, and you described earlier, this kind of synergy between the two, just, you know, uh, sort of de-reifying these constructions, dropping, realizing the emptiness of them, the inherent emptiness of them, and allowing that to deepen the sense of absorption. But the absorption is a kind of deep dark state, whereas sudden awakening is more of a clear radiance. So even there, we're already starting to acclimate to the descent of the deep dark and the ascent of the clear radiance, which then we shift into even more in completion stage work. But what I find interesting is that's, the concentration is ninefold, sudden awakening is tenfold. Then we move into 11-fold work, which is really the path of embodiment. Really, the aim there is continuity of realization. Tenfold gives us glimpses, but continuity requires that we work in a different way. And so we take that view of non-dual presence first, and then surface into the world. And so surfacing into the world means activating the imaginal because we actually imagine ourselves into the world. And so it makes a lot of sense that during generation stage practice, that this kind of poetic attunement that you're in actually starts to become animated in a kind of way that starts to be generative, right? It's generation stage after all. It starts to be generative, and so you're noticing, and it showed up for you as poetry and as song. It could show up for somebody else as creative art of who knows what kind. It could show up as movement. It could show up as just about anything. But there's this way of actually from a state of realization of learning how to be in the world, and there is always this kind of creative element because every moment is actually a creation, right? So it makes a lot of sense that that started to become amplified and flowing. Um, and then there's completion stage work, which continues to take care of some of the remaining really, really subtle um, blockages to continuity. And there, as you know, we work with the descent of the deep darkness and the ascent of the clear radiance, but in a more concentrated way, in a sense. And then there's the radical simplification of the whole thing as we move from the 11-fold into the 12-fold, which is really the hard approach. And there really is no practice. It's probably the best way to say it. There's just simply being here. And we can still meditate, we can still sit there, but we're not really trying to practice anything in particular. We're really just being sort of radically open. And this is what's needed because that final barrier, this core wound that we all have, is something that the ego can't really do anything about. And so just allowing ourselves to sit there is really that invitation to grace. And so, but we have, it's like we have prepared ourselves to be really fully open to grace through the path that we have traversed, through the blockages, the emotional hurts, the wounding that we can do something about, the emotional healing, the waking up, the getting clear about seeing our own psychology. So all that work, none of that work went to waste. In fact, that actually, it's almost like that is what enabled us to actually sit in a kind of effortlessness, in a kind of complete surrender to this, which then is the deepest, fullest expression of the poetic attunement and letting be, letting unfold. So we finally got back to, okay, it's just all the poetic attunement and letting be, letting unfold, which is actually where we started in the very beginning, literally the first two lessons in the curriculum. And in the end, we realize actually the entire thing is just that. So I'm hearing all, different bits of this all throughout what you're describing here in terms of how it unfolded. So yeah, really lovely.
Yeah,
Is
and
there, go ahead.
yeah, and in those, like, in particular, the first couple of retreats I did were a lot about the emotional healing and just having this taste of non-duality through the concentration practice, like the ninefold style, and just dropping into the deep black nothingness, deep blue samadhi quality and sense of equanimity, and just acclimating to that, surrendering to that. And then in the retreats 3 and 4, this is when a lot of these other things were unfolding. But I think that that foundation of like the surrender and just acclimating in that way was really helpful in working through a lot of the emotional hurts and parts, and yeah, all that in those first two retreats in particular really paved the way for the much deeper surrender in retreats 3 and 4, where I still had things come up, but it also was a lot of it was much more ancestral and pre-verbal things, and collectively feeling into what's happening, or more existential feelings, and working with the core wound. But it was not so much about the personal hurts, or I mean that there was some grief coming, like grief work, but not as much around just like being like really deep in trauma, like working through a lot of trauma. So that yeah, was supportive, and it kind of just made it really beautiful, because those first two retreats were much harder. It was much more like, oh, this is really difficult, and like there is a lot coming up, and then these like 3 and 4 was just like, wow, like I'm so excited to go again, let's see what's gonna unfold. Like there was like that, like even though knowing it there could be like being with the core wound, there was still a sense of a trust in a sense of capacity, in a sense of like wanting to open to grace, and really having this profound trust in the unfolding that it's like, yeah, like whatever arises, it can be met here, and it's all in service to more, for the more to be revealed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of the things I notice in the somewhere around the 11-fold for me, as I started to really intensify into those practices, something really shifted where my concern, my concern for the world, my concern for other people, my concern for collective suffering really got amplified, uh, traversing through that section of the system. And also hearing a little bit of that in what you're describing.
Yeah.
You know, earlier on, even though we're dropping into deep states, even into transpersonal states, there is still a little bit of this sense of kind of like working through my own wounding, working through my own relationships, working with how do I engage the world? What's my sense of purpose? What do I feel called to do? These kinds of questions are circulating around, and they're constantly, my sense of the world is getting readjusted by the practice, but it keeps calling me back into that. But then the adjustment becomes, it differs a little bit in the 11-fold practice, such that the concern shifts and opens up even more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the enlightened world meditation is so beautiful for opening into that and really sensing into the possibility of sacred world and sacred relationship, community, being of benefit to all beings, like really embodying that and feeling that that is ultimately who we are, like that well-wishing for all, sending blessings everywhere, wanting to caretake the whole. Like that was such a beautiful, is such a beautiful practice that felt like very connected to my heart intentions as well, and just the kind of like coming full circle of the all of this being a path from the heart to the heart, like that was is that beautiful expression. And yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Is there anything that you want to share about this that I haven't asked about or that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I think like engaging the heart, like just how important that has been in this whole process, and the heart intentions, the starting with my deepest aspiration and refuge and vow and dedication of merit, and really grounding in that on a daily basis, and sometimes multiple times a day, of really just coming back, and the copper sincerity, and just the sense of really like may I be of benefit, may life use me well, and like just coming back again and again, and through that also activating the poetic attunement that has been very important, and just feeling into the kind of like the love all around as well, or like the holding of the earth, and that deeper belonging, and just how like how loved and held I am in the process of surrendering, that life, like there is like life loves loves us, like life wants to support us in unfolding from that innate wholeness into that ever greater expression, and like support the evolution of love itself in a way, like that sense of the universe is a friendly place, and like inhabiting that view more and more. And so just like that really softened everything, that it really was so helpful to be in that view of like, what is the most beautiful, true and good view of reality that I can inhabit, and how can I keep coming back, and like the poetic attunement as a way of actualizing that, and just to keep regrounding, and then to not get not feel like I'm just going through the motions, or I'm just okay, another day, and like let's go, like kind of slipping back into the striving paradigm of like needing to accomplish something, or getting caught in comparing, like this sit was so great, but like now it was different, or like just noticing that uh the extraordinary way of practice, like that the nothing missing, the like there like it's already all, there's nothing I need to accomplish here, like that really made a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I find as well. That whole notion that, and this is really what it is to practice in the unfolding paradigm, right? Is to take the view of extraordinary practice of, you know, my nature to do this practice, to express this practice is just effortless for my nature, my fundamental nature. There's nothing to strive for here. There's nothing to accomplish here. There's just simply a demonstration, an enjoyment even of really just sitting here um, in the pleasure of being, in the profundity of being, in the mystery of being. So, and yeah, to start there instead of, boy, I'm not really good at this. Maybe if I practice a lot, I'll get better at it, right? Which, I mean, makes sense in a certain kind of way, and yet it kind of sets us up for the practice feeling burdensome, constantly feeling like we're not getting it, constantly feeling like um, we're not good at this, you know, uh, and just sitting there kind of like in the midst of our ongoing failure in some sense. Um, who wants to do that, right? Who wants to do that for a month? Like, who wants to do that for even an hour, even a half an hour, even 20 minutes, right? So yeah, that context makes the world of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there were definitely times when parts of me felt overwhelmed, and a sense of there's so much territory here and there is so much more, and just with everything I did, like more questions would come, and then there were more questions and just more questions, and then I would live into a bit of an answer, but then another question arose, a deeper question, and like it was just discovering more and more and more questions as I went along. And it just became like the mystery became more and more unfathomable and mysterious and incredible. And then to like come back and sense like, and nothing missing, being like getting there by being there. It's endless, and just to allow it to unfold. Because I did go through all the Aletheia materials on these, especially on this last retreat. Like I did the full read through of levels 3 and 4, which was a lot of materials to go through. It was like, wow, like there's there's so much here, and it's like it's okay. Like it's like yes, it's gonna keep revealing itself, and yeah, and then also the sense of like actually trusting what that I was doing it, like not doing it, but that it was happening,
Yeah,
like
right.
sense of this part sometimes would come in and question, like, am I making this up, like am I fabricating this as yeah, am I making this up, that I'm experiencing this, or is this actually what's happening right now? And then
Yeah.
with cultivating more of that comfort with, this is what's here now and present to this, let's just go with it, let's just be with this, and yeah, like that, because it's like it's such far out territory at times, like especially this whole 12-fold and all the imaginal, like the energy practices, that it's easy for a part to say, hey, like are you really doing this, like
Yeah, it is. And when those parts show up, the thing I like to say is we know what to do with that. We just turn to that part. That part's really trying to help. It has a good intention. And we can acknowledge that we understand, that we hear it. We can appreciate its good intention. And, it will also, like every other part that feels seen and understood, loved, and valued, it will also relax, allowing you to return back to whatever is happening. And so that's really the design of this, is that there's constantly a way, there's always a way to relate to exactly what's unfolding right now without a need to change it. So we're not changing primary experience, but we're always changing our relationship to primary experience. Like that's the basic move that we're doing. And noticing the parts that jump in that want to change primary experience with good intention or that want to prevent certain things from happening, avoid certain things, grab hold of certain things like, ooh, that felt good, let's have more of that, and then recognizing that we can appreciate that, but then shift back into presence and then just keep returning, which is really the way of shifting back into the poetic attunement, shifting back into letting be, letting unfold, and then just continue. And there's a way of just sort of dancing with all of that within this. Um, I also wanted to really appreciate just your mentioning of like the starting with the heart and ending with the heart. And so really the heart is kind of there the whole way through the practice. We definitely have a kind of detour through, there's the depth approach and then the mind approach, then the body approach, and then back to the heart approach. But we start with those heart intentions because really it's investing our heart in the practice and in the view that really is the most important thing. Kind of like it's the through line. And I really hear that in what you're sharing here of just how much your heart was in it from the very beginning. And that in and of itself unfolded. It's like you put your heart in it and that's what unfolds. Your heart unfolds, and ultimately, it's in my view, it's the heart that becomes enlightened. And so it's like, and that's the seeds have been planted by investing your heart in it, by putting your heart in it from the beginning. And so that just kind of unfolds throughout the whole thing. And yeah, there are these detours or these waypoints where depth is a little bit more focused on, or the mind is a little bit more focused on, or the body is a little bit more focused on, and yet there is that through line. So I appreciate you naming that because I think that that's another key piece of this, not to be overlooked.
Yeah. And I feel like that also helps with aligning personal intent with universal intent and just being a blessing for all, like that, just being animated by life and that sense of just in the 12-fold, the spontaneous qigong or the spontaneous self-arising wisdom just living through and um yeah, like that, the heart in a way, like helping to align in that.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, uniting personal will with universal intent is we focus on that a little bit in the diamond body practices, and yet that really is a lot of what we're working to do through 11-fold and into 12-fold is and so what we talked about earlier about how the concern at that stage of practice actually naturally gravitates more towards collective suffering, and so the sensitivity to that is part of also what allows universal intent to flow through, right? So I love that you bring that in as well. And I think you talked about, maybe it was in one of the conversations we had a month or so ago, about even also that is another practice that you can do when you're taking your walks in nature, of just feeling into the interplay of universal intent, personal will. How are the two coherent with each other? Are they not? Are they incoherent with each other? Feeling into that. Is there anything more you can say about that?
um yeah, just that like I've had really beautiful moments of just feeling like it's just life moving me, on a hike, and like there's song coming through of the song that came through, and just like everything is just happening, and that there's no one to make it happen. It's just
Mm-hmm.
one time I slipped on the hike. There was a steep hill and it was like a dirt path, and I was mid song, and it was all about opening to grace, all wide awake, open to grace. And I went down, and the next moment I was up, I kept singing. There was no shock response whatsoever. It was the most fluid,
Mm.
and it was so beautiful. It's like, wow, like that's what it can, like that's what's possible. Like it was just, I was just being moved, and just it was complete continuity, and I didn't hurt myself. Like it was just like, whoo, wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we need to stop here.
Yes.
My next client is already in the waiting room, so
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just noticed, but I really want to honor you for being a pioneer here and, taking up everything that I'm teaching and offering in these classes and really creating an innovative way to engage this that sounds so powerful. And I really hope that other people are inspired, whether it's to like take this up as you did in a retreat setting, or to find another way to really sink into the teachings and the practices to practice the view, to embody the view, because I think really amazing, almost miraculous things are possible with this. So thank you so much for what you did, what you're doing, and for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your guidance. Yeah, it's really been a huge blessing in my life, and I think for the world. So deep, deep gratitude.
Thank you so much. All right.